About an hour's time here on Live from Paris. Right now, we're going to take a look at what's making headlines in the French newspapers this Wednesday. Joining me for that is Haxi Myers-Belkin, who's been avidly thumbing through the front pages and more for us. Thanks, Haxi. We're going to start off with this top story, real landmark historic news that the fighting has now stopped in Aleppo.
Unsurprisingly, making a lot of front pages today in the French press. Let's start with this exceptionally stark front page from left-wing daily Libération. Lies Aleppo reads the headline, "Here Lies Aleppo." It's a headline as epitaph that conveys the sheer devastation of Syria's second city as the last of the rebel neighbourhoods fall to forces loyal to President Bashar al-Assad. Headlined "Ignominie or Disgrace." The editorial further on in the paper focuses on the way the world has been forced to look on as atrocity after atrocity is committed in that city. The horrors experienced by those being bombed by Russian warplanes and being shelled by regime forces are there for all to see on our TV screens and on social media via hashtags like simply hashtag Aleppo. It's a constant stream of testimony that we read here has been met with silence from the international community.
A very different front page from the centre-right leaning Le Figaro.
Yes, here you can see a Syrian army tank rolling through what was just days ago a rebel-held zone in Aleppo. Putin and Assad triumph in the ruins of Aleppo after 4 weeks of intense fighting, reads this headline. And the paper's front page editorial explores that a little further. Headlined, "The Desire to Act." This is a damning piece about the consequences of Western inaction in Syria. We read that when Obama's red line on Syria's chemical weapons turned out to be not so much of a red line at all, Vladimir Putin's decision to send warplanes to help Assad meant that the only international power really choosing to act in any way in Syria was, in fact, Russia, and of course to devastating effect.
Now, we also have a cartoon from back to Libération, the first newspaper we were looking at, that expresses the same idea.
Yes, you can see it just there. We see Assad sitting on Putin's shoulders as the Russian leader wades through streets flowing in blood and corpses. "Long live free Aleppo," exclaims Assad, blood dripping from his shoes, and a devastated skyline in the distance, as you can see there. It's also worth flagging up a very good and in-depth piece in Le Monde today, headlined "The Chronicle of an Impossible Revolution." It reminds us of the chronology of the last 5.5 years of civil war in the country, with a particular focus on the role that the West and Russia have had on the ground. That's worth a read.
All right, let's move on to another story, this time being reported on in Le Monde, the broadsheet newspaper. Haxi, you found a very specific piece about some labour reform that's going to affect thousands of immigrant workers in Qatar.
Absolutely. So right now in Qatar, there's a so-called kafala system for migrant workers, whereby employees need to obtain the permission of their employers to leave the country or to even swap jobs. No surprise then that this system has been called by many people as a form, it's been described as a form of modern slavery, quite simply. But according to Qatar, that system is about to be abolished to better protect worker rights. But in this article, a French Amnesty International activist denounces the move as what she calls false reform. Employers will still, she says, be able to forbid workers from quitting their jobs, and they'll also be able to retain their passports if the employee has given prior permission.
All right, very interesting look into those details. We've also got news from the United States that's making headlines in France. Haxi, the newspapers here avidly following all the latest details as Donald Trump puts together his incoming administration.
They are. So the unlikely team set to govern America reads the front page of Les Echos. We read here that America's president-elect has designed a cabinet in his own image. That's to say, iconoclasts who are united in their lack of experience in government. They're business leaders, they're bankers, they're also overwhelmingly rich, white, and of course, male cat. And later on in
we have noticed that.
And later on in the paper, there's another article, the main article, that does warn that we shouldn't actually be jumping to too many conclusions as to what his picks might mean for policy. We read that it's tempting to assume, for example, that his choice of oil magnate and ExxonMobil chief Rex Tillerson isn't exactly great news for the environment, but we're warned that other Trump moves, like his decision to meet with heavyweight environmental campaigner and, of course, former Vice President Al Gore, mean that actually with Trump right now, nothing is certain.
As it was always the case, I think most people would agree. Let's end on a piece that you found in La Croix newspaper. This is about the legacy of the Harkis here in France, a group of people that some of our viewers might not really know that much about. Who were the Harkis?
So, the word Harkis refers to the Algerian men who fought alongside the French army in the Algerian War of Independence between 1954 and 1962. When Algeria ultimately won its independence, many of these people and their families, 85,000 people in total, sought refuge in France, and many of them, and this might appear rather strange to people not familiar with the story, ended up in very small rural French villages. Some 10,000 of them, we read in this article. Now, by the 90s, most of these families had moved to more urban areas, but the descendants of those Algerians who made their lives in rural France are now fighting for formal recognition of their ancestors' contribution to French rural life. They want memorial plaques to go up and Harkis homes to be preserved. You can read more about that on the website of La Croix.
A very interesting episode in French history indeed. Thanks so much, Haxi Meisbelkin. He'll be back later on looking through the international newspapers for us as well. It's time